week one of college football is here, and we've already seen some late game theatrics, some late game drama between Nebraska and Minnesota. It wasn't the most entertaining game, but it was a back and forth game, a game in which was low scoring. And we saw some things from both sides that were good, but we also saw some things that could improve. I think the biggest thing that stands out is that whatever Joe Rossi wants to be paid, he probably will deserve to be paid, whether that's with Minnesota or some other team. Minnesota's a defensive coordinator, does a phenomenal job of getting his team ready to play, and we saw that against Nebraska. Minnesota won this game 13 to 10. But if it weren't for those four turnovers that they created, this game might have been drastically different. Two of those turnovers were in their own territory and really close to the end zone. So that was definitely something that helped Minnesota win this game. And like I said, Joe Rossi does a great job of expecting his guys to play together, and they certainly did that. You look at what they were able to do in this game. They were able to limit a Nebraska offense that was driving at times. They killed Nebraska's momentum, and interceptions were obviously the biggest cause of that. But there was also that key fumble late in the fourth quarter. So this is a group that will not back down. They will fight every single drive, and they treat every drive as a new drive, and they do not give up. They will not back down. Even if teams are driving, they will find ways to get the football back to their team. And the guy they picked off three times was Jeff Sims. And we all knew that it was going to be an experiment with Jeff Sims. We knew that it might take some time for him to get up to speed. And we saw some good things from him. I don't want to knock him for, the three interceptions obviously did not help his team. But you saw some good things with him, and you saw some good things with Nebraska. The double pitch pass was a really fun play that obviously opened things up for them in the second half. His 91 yards rushing proved that he is an elite athlete. That is really tough to stop. Minnesota didn't really have an answer for him for that good chunk where he was just running the ball. So he's someone who I think can learn a few things from this game, but I think that there is plenty of upside for him to utilize. I think you even saw some things where the Georgia Tech experience got to him. There were a couple play action passes where he had plenty of time to throw, and he kind of just short arms and passes. So I think that he's going to like the experience at Nebraska if they can tweak some things, and you'll see that he has plenty of time to throw now. It's just a matter of trusting his offensive line and being able to make some of those throws. You look at the Minnesota side of things, Daniel Jackson had an eventful fourth quarter. When you look at what he went through, he had a drop pass in the fourth quarter. He had a number of plays that were impactful in that fourth quarter. So you had the drop pass. He got overthrown on a deep ball. He got a missed pass interference on Nebraska that wasn't called. He caught a pass in the end zone, but couldn't get a foot down with control. And then he has a great post corner route. And if you haven't seen that, definitely go back and watch that. And he has an elite toe drag to get the game tying TD. So you're looking at a guy who had an eventful fourth quarter and someone who this coaching staff is really excited about, and it's easy to see why. Minnesota's culture obviously was on full display. You saw a group that did not give up, and you saw a group that played swarming defense, but also found ways to win a football game that at times didn't look good. And that's something that will be noted. That's something to really pay attention to when you're looking at Minnesota down the road. Nebraska's culture, I think that he looked better under Matt Rule. Obviously, it's a disappointing loss. It's another one score loss. So that doesn't help. That doesn't make anybody feel better, probably, but you're still looking at a program that it looks like they are headed in the right direction. Again, Minnesota's defense was just on full display of how good they can be. There aren't too many players. Tyler Newman is probably the one guy that you look at in terms of the future in the NFL. Justin Wally could be another one. But you saw a number of players who a lot of people probably don't know. They're not household names. They're not kids that you're familiar with. They're not these 4 or 5 star kids that everybody is aware of. This is a group that plays as a unit, and you can see at times where they're playing not as a unit and they get in trouble there. But once they really find a way to play together, once they find a way to trust each other and trust their teammates, then you're looking at a group that's one of the best in college football. There's a reason why they finished top 10 in scoring last year. This is a group that knows how to play well. and play within their means. And you saw that on full display. This is a group that made Jeff Sims uncomfortable at times, and that allowed them to create turnovers, that allowed them to get stops when they needed them. And this was a clutch performance by this defense. The turnovers were pretty fun to watch. The turnovers were essentially really needed because this is a Nebraska team that simply would not give up and honestly probably should have won this game if we're being honest. I think that Nebraska had this game under wraps until the turnovers started to create more opportunities for Minnesota. And obviously Minnesota has things to work on. I think the biggest thing that we'll talk about for both teams is the quarterback position. This was a quarterback position battle where you saw two guys who had potential. Both Jeff Sims and Ethan Kaliakmanis have the potential to be really fun quarterbacks to watch. They are two guys that have arm talent that can help them make almost any throw on the field. It's just that they have to find ways to settle down and trust their teammates and then find a way to make more accurate passes. Sims obviously was underthrowing things like we said before. Manis was throwing fastballs all the time. And there were times where, yes, that looks really good. And honestly, his his fastball looks really good. I think that he can fit some passes into tight windows that a lot of quarterbacks can't. But then there were times where he needed to add some touch, and I think that the jitters of week one of game one kind of got to him because we saw him. I think the best thing is that we saw him calm down in the clutch. We saw him calm down when they needed him to most. And Jeff Sims did that at times too. So both guys showed that they can be solid players, solid contributors, and solid passers. It's just finding the consistency and finding ways to be able to help this team rather than hurt them. And I think the best thing was Nathan just took care of the ball better. He did not turn the ball over. The one interception was tough because he was having such a good drive too. He had three or four nice passes until he throws it short, throws it a little bit late and didn't throw it far enough outside so that Omar Brown picked it off, and that was obviously a mistake. He'll go back and watch and find ways to improve upon that. Jeff Sims obviously needs to work on some things too, needs to find a way to take care of the football better. And like I said before, trust that his teammates are going to give him time at Nebraska to make plays. There were times where he had clean pockets, and you could tell he was still uncomfortable because he's so used to his Georgia Tech experience where he didn't get time to throw. He did not get any opportunities to make big plays or to take shots downfield. And he just has to trust that his teammates will do what's best for him. And that will help Nebraska a lot. I think that Jeff Sims' ability to play well is the biggest difference, the biggest thing, maybe holding Nebraska back a little bit on offense, but still should be a decent team if they can figure those things out. Obviously, it was a low scoring game. There's some things that both teams need to figure out, but it was a good win for Minnesota. Both teams learned things about themselves, and now both teams have something to look back on, film to watch, and things they can prove upon for the next week.